Turkey and Syria and the Kurds. We could send in 1,000 troops for a military conflict. We could hit Turkey very hard financially. Or we could mediate a deal between Turkey and the Kurds. I like that.
Well, President Trump defending his decision to remove U.S. troops from northern Syria. This, as officials fear thousands of ISIS fighters held in Syrian prisons may escape. The United States has already taken custody of dozens of terrorists. But how could the invasion by Turkey potentially put Americans at risk abroad and here at home? Ryan Mauro is a national security analyst, and he joins me now with more. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. So a volatile situation, to say the very least, going on. How do you think it can impact us? Let's begin with here at home.
Sure. Well, for me, the biggest thing is the risk of a resurgence of ISIS. But there are other terrorist groups in Syria, including al-Qaeda, which basically has an army there. And there's other terrorist groups backed by Turkey. So I'm worried about the growth of all of them, but especially ISIS, because in order to understand what makes ISIS grow, you have to look at the prophecies that they say they are fulfilling. That's what attracts people, makes people believe in this crazy cause. They say, well, it looks like Allah is blessing them because they're fulfilling the prophecies. And according to their beliefs, they have the caliphate that's born, but then they have a series of defeats. And then they make a comeback.
Interesting.
So if they escape from those camps and you have thousands, tens of thousands of ISIS fighters and they make a resurgence, we're fulfilling the prophecy for them at that point.
Yeah, and when you talk about thousands, we can bring this up for people. Look, at least 11,000 potentially ISIS prisoners that could escape from Syria.
Those are just the fighters. That doesn't even include the women and children.
Where will they go?
Well, a lot of them are going to want what they consider to be martyrdom, of course. Cleanse their sins from their lives so that they can go to heaven. They're still going to believe that. But there's another 60,000 women and children, the family members of those ISIS fighters. And then, of course, you have displaced civilians, some of which will also be supporting ISIS. So you're looking at the potential unleashing of an ISIS army. And I do not trust Erdogan, who I consider the dictator of Turkey, and I consider him to be the slickest jihadist that we have faced since 9/11, because he's so effective. I don't trust him in handling ISIS at all. He allowed them to grow, and he's been accused of actually taking them and using them, deploying them essentially against the Kurds. So maybe he'll rebrand them and have them fight under a different name.
Yeah, but at the same time, you can really see it both ways. If you listen to the president talk about last night, you know, one of the toughest jobs he has is when he has to go to these family members of our military service troops who die in action, you know, over there in these wars that just continue year after year after year, Afghanistan, Syria. One of the things that we were able to accomplish, the ISIS Beatles, this group, they are in custody now. So what should we do with them? This is what the president had to say about that last night.
We captured many ISIS fighters. They're citizens of these various countries in Europe. Take your fighters. We don't want them, sir. We don't want them. And I said, how unfair are we treated?
So two of the baddest of the bad, so to speak.
Right. So apparently there's a little bit of a conflict with the UK because they might not want to hand over evidence in order to prosecute some of these guys because we have the death penalty. And I would say, well, then don't give them the death penalty. They want to become martyrs. Don't give it to them. They'll be more miserable in jail living. So to me, I think that there's more of a deterrent there. And I would also add just one quick thing, just so people understand, there's an estimated 100,000 Christians right now in the area that Turkey is bombarding, and reportedly some are already dead. So I'm not seeing that in the media coverage. I want people to understand that there are persecuted Christians at risk here.
And you know what you're talking about because you spend a lot of time over there. You're going back to Saudi Arabia, you said tomorrow?
I am, yeah. So I'm going to be spending some time there. I go back and forth to the region. And the other point I'll make from my trips is that the Kurds also loved Trump. That's part of the reasons this is so alarming to me, is because the Kurds, aside from Israel, really are the light in the darkness in the Middle East, and they were emphatically pro-Trump. But now, obviously, they're second-guessing things.
Yeah, well, we'll see. He said he's open to, you know, kind of being the middleman, and
he might defend them. Yeah, you never know.
Right. Thank you so much, Ryan. Safe travels, by the way.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you here. Well,